The Shogenji Temple is in central Japan. It belongs to the Rinzai school of Zen Buddhism and is a special center where Zen monks undergo training. The 8th day of the 12th lunar month sees the beginning of a week of intensive meditation and religious discourse. The week is called Rahatsu Ozeshin. On the evening before it begins, an atmosphere of tense determination fills the monastery. Rahatsu Ozeshin is associated with the Enlightenment of Shakyamuni, the Buddha, after he saw the morning star on the 7th day of his seated meditation under the Bodhi tree. For the monks in training, it is the most important period of Zen practice and a climax in their monastic life, one which measures the effectiveness of the past 12 months of training. This, at last, is the Rahatsu Ozeshin you have all waited for. For 7 days, you will sit as if it were a single day. This training period is aptly called a monk killer, but I ask you all to put every possible effort into it and not to spare yourself in any way. Master and monks gather together in the dining hall and drink tea poured from the same container. This strengthens the sense of unity between them in their training, and they pledge to devote themselves totally to the meditations that will begin the next day. Rahatsu Ozeshin normally takes place at the beginning of December, but at the Shogenji it begins in accordance with the lunar calendar on the 15th of January, when the weather is at its hardest and coldest. It lasts for 7 days. It is now midnight on the 14th. In the meditation hall, the atmosphere has gradually become tenser. The monks lie down to sleep. Ozeshin will begin at 3 in the morning. They have time for only a short nap before then. Among the monks, there are several newcomers who are about to experience Rahatsu Ozeshin for the first time. Harumi Asayama is one. In April last year, when the cherry blossoms were beginning to fall, he came here to the Shogenji to undergo training. To become a Zen priest, one must enter a Zen monastery for the proper training. In other words, one must follow the training of an unsui. Harumi Asayama is the son of a Zen priest. Since childhood, he has intended to follow in his father's footsteps. But will he be able to accustom himself to the isolated monastic life, so well known for its strict discipline? He can't help but feel anxious. I have come with a request. What do you want? I'm from the Kwanonji temple of Izumo City in Shimane. My name is Harumi Asayama. I'm the disciple of Keishu Asayama. I've come here to stay and receive training. Please take my request to the abbot. Please wait here a moment. His request to enter the monastery is in accordance with the traditional rules he has been taught. After a short while, the shikario, who is the chief monk or administrator of a Zen monastery, appears. The monastery is full. There is no room, so we cannot accept you. Please leave immediately. It is a polite but blunt refusal, with the explanation that the monastery is full and that therefore there is no room for him. But he must not be discouraged. Until he is granted permission to enter the monastery, he will remain sitting here. On the same day, the employees of a local company are at the monastery for a brief training course. The modest way of life and the training and concentration given here are looked on with favor today as things that are hard to come by in modern society. Brief courses of this nature have now become part of the annual calendar of events at the monastery. The figure of Asayama sitting perfectly still in the entrance hall, wearing his straw sandals, brings curious looks from the young visitors, about the same age as he is, as they pass. It began raining in the afternoon. Asayama's hands and feet have become numb, and his joints are hurting. But there is no word from inside the monastery. It has been a long day for him. In the evening, he is at last given a meal of leftovers and a room for the night. But this does not mean that he has been given permission to enter the monastery. He is told to leave early in the morning. He will therefore have to stay in the same posture all day tomorrow. Why is it that a cold refusal, even if only a formality, is given repeatedly and without exception to those who wish to take up Zen training? It is, in fact, a test to see how strongly the applicant is determined to embark on the program of training. The final goal of Zen, satori, or enlightenment, is not something that can be learnt from another. It can only be attained by the seeker himself. The key to the path to enlightenment is the strength of the seeker's motivation and his single-minded determination. On the 5th day, Asayama is given permission to enter the monastery and begin training. He has spent 2 days in supplication, during which time he kept up his posture of low bowing, and passed through a 3-day test period of provisional admission. About 2 weeks later, together with 2 other novices who were granted admission at the same time, Asayama goes to exchange greetings with his Zen master. Their relationship is now that of master and disciple. A Roshi, or Zen master, is one who has attained the same level of satori as Shakyamuni. A Zen disciple acts towards his master in the same way as when he worships Buddha. The 3 newcomers, having been given permission to enter the monastery, make a vow not to leave it until they have found satori. The introduction of the 3 to the meditation hall is accomplished by a single phrase, which means new trainees have joined. No names are mentioned, nor anything about the trainees. There are about 30 unsui in this monastery, including some who have been here for almost 10 years, some who have come from other monasteries, family men, and men from the world of commerce. Their backgrounds are many and varied, but in Zen, in which everything is relative to that single moment each person seeks, the past and the outside world are of no importance. The meditation hall is described by words on the wall outside it, the Senbutsujo, the place where those capable of reaching satori and becoming Buddhas are made. It is a holy place that does not easily allow laymen to approach. A single tatami mat, 3.5 feet wide and 7 feet long, is assigned to each monk. This is where he sleeps and where he performs his seated meditation. Traditional Japanese Zen Buddhism is divided into 3 schools: the Soto, Rinzai, and Obaku. The Rinzai school has 39 special centers in different parts of Japan. The Shogenji is one of these. In Zen Buddhism, a monastery is likened to a grove of trees. Trees in a grove will grow straight and submissively, even though competing with one another. But trees growing in isolation extend their branches self-indulgently. Monks in training are the same. It is paramount that they have a clean environment, good company, and a strict master. At 3 in the morning on the 15th of January, Rahatsu Ozeshin begins with the ringing of the morning bell. From this moment until dawn, 7 days later, the monks will make an intense effort with neither sleep nor rest, as if the entire week were but a single day. There is still some time before daybreak. The cold is piercing. With a single pinch of salt and a ladle full of water, the monks rinse their mouths and wash their faces. He finishes his preparations and dons his robe. Everything is done in haste. In the monastery, time is precious. The unsui have to reach satori as soon as possible. They must not waste a single moment. At about the same time as the unsui are getting up in the meditation hall, there is one corner of the monastery where the lights are already on and work is in full swing, the kitchen, where meals for the whole monastery are prepared. Normally 2 monks share the duties here, but during Ozeshin, all the work is entrusted to just 1 monk. The morning rice gruel is cooked in a large iron cauldron, as it has always been. The fuel is firewood gathered on the hillsides by the unsui. The rice and vegetables collected by the monks during their begging, no matter how little, must never be wasted. Kitchen duties are looked upon as the most suitable of all the tasks in a monastery for the monk's training. The cook takes charge of the provisions and thus the health of his fellow monks, and the work demands unobtrusive service and heavy labor. Dogen, the 13th century founder of the great Eheji monastery of the Soto school, crossed to China to study Zen, and while there is said to have experienced sudden satori through the speech and activities of an elderly cook. This episode is a good illustration of the inner workings of Zen training and the importance of the cook, for without labor and ingenuity in the use of everyday routines and experience, there is no satori. After morning seated meditation and a visit to the Zen master for instruction, breakfast is served at 5 o'clock before it is light. The monks take turns waiting upon each other. The quantity of food served is determined by hand signals, which indicate when a monk feels he has received enough. Before the meal, The monks chant a scripture to give thanks for the food, which has come to them through the charity of others. With each meal, they rededicate themselves to the search for truth. A few grains of rice are put to one side as an offering to hungry spirits. The meals in the monastery are very simple. Today's breakfast consists of rice gruel with rice cakes left over from the new year and a few pieces of pickled radish. The dining room is another important place for training. It is one of the 3 halls of silence, the others being the meditation hall, where zazen, seated meditation, is done, and the bathhouse. Even whispering is forbidden. Manners demand that no noise should be made while handling the dishes, while eating the gruel, or when biting the pickles. Until one is accustomed to this, it is not always easy. Every last drop of water must be used. This is the spirit of Zen monastery. The monks use their tea to wash their bowls and then drink it. During Ozeshin, routine activities such as manual labor and begging are brought to a halt, and the unsui concentrate only on meditation, day and night. Zazen is a way of meditation handed down over the centuries from India. It is a systematic way of searching for satori by unifying body and mind through control of one's breathing. The correct manner of sitting erect is adopted. The body forms a pyramid, with the head as the apex and the legs crossed to form part of the base. Next, the breathing is regulated. Breathing normally tends to be short and shallow. For zazen, it must be longer and deeper. If this is done correctly, the body will not feel cold even in the middle of winter. Lastly, the mind must be controlled. All rambling thoughts and worldly desires are put away. The object is to attain a state of detachment. In other words, satori. At intervals between periods of zazen, kinhin, meditation while walking, is performed. The monks walk around the meditation hall rapidly. This light physical exercise enables them to relax their stiff bodies and drives away drowsiness. It is, in a manner of speaking, moving zazen. It artfully combines movement and stillness. Ozeshin is described as deadly, difficult, but but it never forces irrational penance on the monks or austerities that ignore the limits of the human body. The midday meal is taken at 10:30 a.m. and consists of rice, miso soup, and a side dish. The evening meal consists of gruel made from leftover rice and vegetables. No animal products are ever consumed. Sanzen, meeting the Zen master, takes place 4 times a day between 4 and 9. It is one of the 2 principal activities during intense training, the other being zazen, seated meditation. The master gives each monk a koan, which is a problem to be solved. One by one, the monks enter the master's room and recite their answers. The master considers each one. If the master sees that a monk is straying from the correct path in his training, he corrects his efforts. Truth in Zen can only be communicated directly from the mind of the master to that of his disciple. Third persons are strictly excluded from this room. Here 2 minds meet in intense confrontation, and the outcome of the interview is unpredictable. The clash of minds is in earnest. The words exchanged between master and disciple regarding any particular koan are strictly a private matter between the 2. No one else is ever told what has been said. When the master rings the bell, it is a sign of an unsatisfactory answer. The monk must withdraw and come again. Zen teaches that Buddha is inside the mind of each of us, not outside. The goal of Zen training is to bring the trainee face to face with his true self, the Buddha within. We have all lost sight of our true selves, misled by the multitude of apparent choices and deceptions of the perceived world. Does a dog possess the Buddha nature? Listen to the sound of one hand clapping. Riddles posed by koan are unanswerable according to the rules of common sense. The monks in training wrestle with them assiduously. But as long as they continue to think in the patterns of ordinary thoughts, they will fail the challenge of their Zen master. They are thus driven into a corner. Failing to satisfy the master again and again, they come at last to understand the futility of the everyday world's logic and knowledge. Thus they are able to see beneath and beyond appearance, and in time find their true selves. That will be satori.
公安、関所の天井を表で聞いたか、裏で聞
A
いたか。
koan. Have you heard the sound of one hand clapping from the front or from the back? This use of koan as an effective means of education was systematized by the Japanese Zen priest Hakuin in the 18th century. Employing koan is the outstanding characteristic of Rinzai Zen. Soto Zen, on the other hand, teaches the use of zazen alone. In the meditation hall, zazen continues after dark. The unsui, taxing their ingenuity to solve the koan they have been given by trying to become the koan, find themselves seized by an almost irresistible urge to sleep. A change in their manner of sitting will betray any wandering of the mind or any impatience. Immediately they will feel the warning stick on their shoulders. Wielding this is the responsibility of the monk in charge of the meditation hall, the jikijitsu. The warning stick is never used for intimidation. It is the stick of compassion, used to rouse the trainee's spirit, and acts in place of the bodhisattva Manjusri, the bodhisattva of enlightenment, master of the meditation hall. The warning stick is used first to drive away sleepiness, then to relax stiffened muscles, and finally to correct the sitting posture. It is, in fact, a symbol of the monastic life, which from beginning to end follows strict rules of etiquette. During Oseshin, in addition to the 3 meals that are eaten, the participants are given something to drink 4 times a day. Although the food in a monastery is the minimum needed by the human body, and frugal in style, meals are nutritional and timed to conform to the rhythms of the trainees' bodies and minds. At 11 o'clock at night, when the outside world seems to have frozen, a drink of sweet rice wine is warming and delicious. The monk who takes charge of such services is known as the Jisharyo. The word means someone offering services to the Bodhisattva Manjusri, the symbol of wisdom and enlightenment. This responsibility belongs to a senior monk. All those who are undergoing training, confined in the meditation hall with Manjusri, are bodhisattvas, even the lowest ranked unsui, and are served just as Manjusri would be. As its nickname, Unsui Killer, suggests, Oseshin is a severe form of training, with harsh, very harsh, discipline. But on the other hand, the trainee is treated with respect and watchful protection. It is an excellent system of education, reminiscent of both a strict father and a loving mother. Midnight. The lights are extinguished, and the meditation hall enters a brief moment of rest. But for the monks training to reach satori, and who must consider 7 days as a single day, lying down is forbidden. They sleep as they are, seated. This is known as zasui. Zen is a branch of Buddhism that developed in China. This temple, the Nankaji Temple, stands in the suburbs of Xingquan, a city in southern China. The temple is a holy place connected with Huineng, the sixth and last of the famous patriarchs of Chinese Zen, who lived between the 5th and 8th centuries. There are always visitors in the grounds. Hui Neng was born in a nearby farming village in 638 AD, at the beginning of the Tang period. His family was poor, and he sold firewood for a living. He is said to have had no education. He attained spiritual enlightenment while turning a millstone with his feet. He was then still a layman in a monastery under the fifth patriarch, Hung Zhen. It was Hui Neng who laid the principal foundations of Zen. Zen was taken to China in the 6th century by the Indian monk Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is an almost legendary figure, and few details of his life are known. There were, however, conspicuous differences between his teachings and those of other forms of Buddhism. Leap directly into the world of Buddha's enlightenment. Awaken to the true self hidden in the recesses of your mind. Teachings like these were well received by the Chinese, who tended to take a practical view of life and people and to accept them as they were. Chinese Zen searched for the way to truth in everyday life, without complicated learning or a series of closely constructed regulations. During the Tang period, from the 7th to the 10th centuries, and the Sung period, from the 10th to the 13th centuries, China saw a succession of great Zen masters who attained the same enlightenment as Shakyamuni. Monks of later generations began to search for hints in the experiences of enlightenment and the words and actions of the great masters that would help them in their own training. The collections they made became the origins of the koan. At the Nankaji temple, there are 7 priests and about 30 students studying under a master with 40 years of experience in Zen practice. The text for today's lecture is the Platform Sutra of the 6th Patriarch. Chinese Zen later changed, but it lives on here at the Nankaji temple. Japanese Zen faithfully adopted the monastic style of life developed in China, further refined it and polished it, and perfected a specific style of training. One of the major activities of normal monastic life is religious mendicancy, or takuhatsu, that is, begging. Shakyamuni strictly forbade monks to engage in productive activity. Takuhatsu is a traditional practice of begging that follows the teachings of Shakyamuni. Of begging, it is said, you may ignore a whole village, but don't ignore a single house. In other words, Every house must be visited, with no distinction made between rich and poor. And the mendicant should not mind if he is given nothing. When he is given something, he should accept it politely and press his palms together in the attitude of prayer and gratitude. Monks in training must bear in mind that they live on the charity of others, and they must give them the pleasure of giving. To this end, they must abandon selfish ideas and become beggars. That is takuhatsu. There are quite a number of stories of monks whose experiences while begging gave them the insight to solve a koan, and thus to move towards satori. At the Shogen Monastery, rice is planted at the beginning of summer each year. The rice grown by the monks is harvested in the autumn and becomes the rice for the cakes eaten at the new year. No work for a day, no food for a day. The spirit of Chinese Zen is still very much alive in Japanese monasteries. Manual labor is not only a means of supporting one's daily life, it is also an effective aid to reaching enlightenment. In Rinzai Zen in particular, finding enlightenment through labor is placed above finding enlightenment through the seated contemplation of Zazen. Sesshin has continued for 7 days and is now drawing to an end. The unsui are almost in a hurry to visit the master's room for interviews, but their struggles with the koan have not gone very well. The senior monks see this and try to send them back to avoid wasting time on pointless meetings with the master. For the unsui, however, the interview is of vital importance, and they are in no mood to withdraw. They are driven into a mental corner from which advance or retreat seems impossible. Yet they persist. Not even the senior monks can dampen their zeal. What is the satori one obtains through the koan? How is it achieved? There are many examples and stories about the masters of former times, but when all is said and done, these were the experiences of different individuals and occurred once and no more. They are not things that can be copied by others. Just as the locust sheds its skin, so the unsui must break out of their shells by their own efforts. The master can only watch over them and wait. Early dawn of the 8th day. Possession is completed. How many monks were able to find satori through this period of possession? Satori is said to be the encounter with one's true self, but it is in no way a special or mysterious experience. No man becomes in an instant a totally different person or discovers superhuman abilities that others lack. The satori that Zen brings is sought because it offers a glimpse of one's own mind in a state of complete detachment. It brings that calmness of being that makes no distinction between the self and others, and so permits the practice of love and compassion for all living things. It is March. For the first time since he entered the monastery, Asayama has been given permission to return home for several days. This is his first return to the outside world for a year. What did he gain from the rigors of Oseishi? Did he, in his 1 year of training in the monastery, experience anything worthy of being called satori? How far did he progress with the koan? This is something no one can tell. At any rate, he has decided to stay at the monastery and make a determined effort to tackle the challenge of Zen training. It is now April. Once again, the season of blossoms has come to the countryside about the Shogenji Zen temple. And once again, the young people arrive in search of satori. I have come with a request. What do you want?